You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here again, and you know what time it is. We have another show lined up for y'all today. We have Drew on there. We're talking to Max Stevens. He has a website, maxstevenscoaching.com. We're going to learn everything about what he does with his business, because not just him being a transformative thinker, but he is a coach that is going to help you get over the edge. He specializes working with a lot of high profile people who are always on top of their game. But you know what? We're still human. We have our little ups and downs, but he's always there to help us get through those situations. So first and foremost, we're going to learn more about your business, Max. Thank you for taking some time today, man. How you doing?
I'm really good, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I know you're doing some great things. I've been able to see your work and watch some testimonials, a lot of high profile people. You know some patterns that you can kind of break it down for our audience. So if you will, kind of get the backstory, how you launch your business and how were you able to discover some pain points for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was lucky / very unfortunate that I grew up in a drug addicted household. So that turned me into a practical psychologist very, very quickly. That got me very interested in patterns of human behavior, because I'd internalized the belief early on in my life that if my dad had really loved me, he would have been able to get healthy. Because he wasn't able to do that, I must not be lovable. And so it took me years and years even to be able to articulate it, as I just did to you just now. But the thing on the other side of coming through that belief, it became very, very obvious that all of the high performers that I was surrounded by at the time, I originally started working with high performing athletes. All the high performers that I was surrounded by at the time were doing the same thing, just in their own way. They were seeking an external outcome to heal an internal pain point. And so that got me interested in like the arc of the high performer and the arc of the CEO and what their psychographic really is like, what their psychological architecture really is like. And so now, like the adage in my work is I say, you work on your goals and I'll work on you. And so that synergy that I've created with, as you say, I'm very, very lucky to work with the people that I do. That synergy has created, I'm very blessed to say, really good outcomes.
When you look into behind the scenes of high performers, a lot of those who are on the come up, like they're not reaching the peak yet, but they're trying real hard to. We always hear the quote unquote, I have it all. But there's sometimes, and even those people who are lucky or fortunate to have it all, they still some spots in their life where they still feel empty. So for our audience, kind of give some examples of some clients where they feel like, man, I have all this greatness in my life, but I'm still feeling like I'm empty inside.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in order to effectively answer that question, we have to understand where the high performer's journey begins. So the high performer's journey begins normally in one of two places. Number one is a significant pain point that they experience in their own life, or number two is a deep feeling of insignificance that they feel in their own life. And so what happens is they internalize this idea that they are insignificant. And so they seek out external outcomes, achievements, businesses, money, insert whatever you'd like, to sort of disconfirm this foundational belief that they have through formative experiences of feeling insignificant, whether that's through, similar to my story, whether that's they got bullied when they were younger, whether it's that, fill in whatever you'd like. But there's a feeling of insignificance that then they sort of seek an external outcome to disconfirm. The challenge by way of the quote unquote people who quote unquote have it all is the reason why they still feel empty is because no external outcome can heal that internal blockage or pain point. And so what happens is they will often challenge me and say, yeah, Max, but you don't understand that just because I haven't achieved this yet, whatever this is, right? And so like I can remember not too long ago, I ran a digital conversation for 45 different CEOs from different companies. And I said, just notice that when you first started your business, you would have killed somebody to be in the position that you're in now. And you're no happier than you were when you first started. And you're all going to push back against what I'm saying and say, yeah, but Max, you don't understand. That's just because I haven't gotten here yet. But here, notice that you're already on the green side of goals that you said would make you happy. So how do we know, like, for all of you CEOs who think that you're so clever, are you seeing the pattern that is playing out here? And so that through that process, that normally gets the high performer very interested in their internal experience rather than achieving external outcomes. That then turns into the integration of those emotional pain points. And the deep irony is that on the other side of integrating those pain points, the high performer is now more successful than ever before because their journey is about self-expression rather than a path of self-healing.
A lot of people end up getting stagnant in life. And a lot of times that can be to a lot of reasons. But when you work with clients one-on-one and you come across a situation where they feel like they plateaued or they just feel like, wow, like I see in my mind that I want to reach this next goal, but I just feel like, man, I'm riding on E. It's almost negative E. How do you address those situations when they express they feel like they're stagnant and they're just trying to...
So if it's in a business context, right? So one of the things that I'll often talk about with high performers is I go, imagine that you hired an absolute gun for your business, someone who is just an absolute rock star. What would you want to do with their schedule? And normally the business owner will turn back to me and say, I would want to get everything off their schedule so that person could just go be awesome and win us business. And I said, the thing that you're not understanding is you are that person. You are that team member. You are that employee. And so I'm very, very lucky to sit in the seat that I do by way of different business owners, because the pattern that I observe is I can see which businesses are growing really fast, which businesses are growing a bit slower. You know, I'm sort of in this very, very lucky seat. And the businesses that grow really fast is like the fundamental difference is very, very simple, which is that the business owner or the key decision maker spends more of their time on the things that actually grow the business. Like, simple as it may seem. One of the first things that I do is, say if a business owner comes to me and they say, I want to double the size of the revenue in the company, right? Is I go, the first thing I'll say is, okay, show me your calendar. Show me what a week looks like for you. And then they show it to me and I say, well, can we see why it's not growing? Like, it's very obvious. You know, you're getting caught in all of these things that you believe to be really important, you know, but don't actually grow the business. And so by way of how to break through that stagnation point, you know, it really comes down to, like, one of the things that I always say is, like, life is a game of return on time. Where I spend my time is going to yield me particular outcomes. And it's normally when people are quote unquote stuck, it's normally where their time is spent. It's a bottleneck around their time.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Max Stevens. Go to his website, maxstevenscoaching.com. My next follow-up question to that is, when you think about misalignment, kind of piggyback on what you're saying with how we look at our calendars and prioritize what's important and what, you know, we can kind of either kick off our plate or to say, you know what, not right now. How do you break that down with your clients when you try to figure out, okay, what's causing this misalignment and what's some things that we can address to make sure that we don't allow it to continue?
There's very, very few things. There's very, very few things that actually move a business forward. Very few. Like, very few. And so working out whatever those top three things are and then gearing 90 to 100% of your time on those things, you will not have a problem growing your practice.
I like when we notice a lot on this show, a common thread with high performance individuals like yourself. There's one thing that is clear, and that is you have a target. You know what you're actually trying to hit, or at least you know what is driving you. And on this show, the bingo word is purpose. When you see clients who finally lock in on not just the why, but what is driving their why, you know, what is the story that is a part of their whole life? Because without that piece, like that's gonna be a lot of stuff missing on the formula piece. Because if you don't have your why and your purpose driving you every day, then as soon as the storm hits you, you're gonna fold. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you speak beautifully. I think one of the patterns that I have observed in high performers is that the ground that they build their life on, like the epistemic and psychological ground that they build their lives on, is often very poor. And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm working with let's say an executive comes to me or a CEO comes to me and they say, we want to double the size of the revenue of the business. That's like a very common goal. And then I would say, okay, well, why do you want that? And I said, you know, you could have come to me for anything, right? This is the thing that you chose. Why do you want that? And they'll say, so I can prove to all of those people who said I couldn't do it that I can. And I'll say, well, don't you think a better use of our time is just to forgive those people? Because then you wouldn't have to do this at all. And so they often, I find, people tend to build their lives on very shaky ground. And so because they build it on very shaky ground, they don't build it from a place of contribution. They don't build it from a place of connection. They don't build it from a place of community. They often build it from a place, like I said, of disconfirming a deeply held belief about themselves. And so because they often do that, when the storm comes, so to speak, is that epistemic ground isn't strong enough to survive a lot of storms, and so my work fundamentally is about integrating those experiences so that way they have much better ground to stand on, so that they can actually express themselves in the world. And they're no longer attempting to heal themselves through their business, but rather about to have a meaningful impact in the world, or a purpose, if you like. And one of the things I talk a little about in my book is we need a purpose beyond ourselves. So in other words, we need a purpose that extends just beyond me and my petty individual needs, right? And so if we look at this even from an evolutionary biological perspective, tens to hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in tribes. They lived in tribes in the forest. And your success was predicated upon the contribution that you made to that tribe. So did you go and get the berries? Did you go and hunt the fish? Did you go and catch the animal? Etc. You would bring that back, right? And you'd be celebrated in that tribe. Now, tens to hundreds of thousands of years later, right? We know the tribe is no longer like our little corner of the forest. Now it's the world, because we live you're obviously in the States, I'm in Australia. We can have a conversation and we can contribute to each other. And so the question now no longer is what can I contribute to my tribe, but what would I like to contribute to the world? And when we're coming at our purpose from this place, all of those things that we herald in Western materialist culture, like money, status, stuff, success, etc., all of those come just as a natural byproduct of living out that purpose.
When people understand that a title is basically just the starting point, is the person behind the title that makes the title, and how I like how you illustrated how we get sometimes in these traps where it's like, well, if I'm not going to be like so-and-so, or if I'm not going to be like this business, or if I'm not going to prove this group of people wrong about what I can or can't do as a, business professional or person, as an individual, those are traps. And the more time we spend those traps, the less time we have to actually do what actually matters and what you're saying. So my next question would be, when you look at lasting fulfillment, what's some strategies that CEOs and entrepreneurs can take as far as avoiding this trap mindset that, okay, if it's going to be like prove everyone wrong, then I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing that. But if it's for fulfillment, then I'm actually going to have peace at night when I sleep.
The first thing that I would say is stop thinking about you so much. So in other words, start getting your attention off of you and start getting your attention around who you can help and what you can do to serve them.
That's good, because we live in a world where you just want to scroll away to compare yourself to Joan Smith and what he's been doing, or what Susie Taylor has been doing. And these are made up names, by the way. But it's funny how we end up in a vicious cycle of, okay, I had to compete with so-and-so. I got to compete with this brand. And what's funny is, I want you to talk on this point. How easy is it? I know the answer, but I'm just doing it for the audience. Is it to find your own lane? Because I feel like there's more peace when you find your sweet spot versus trying to force yourself to be like someone else's sweet spot, because you don't know what they had to go through to get to where they are. Yeah.
So the first place that I would start in terms of finding one's lane is start with your gifts. So like one of the approximations that I make around the term gifts is that your gifts are actually not meant for you. Your gifts are meant for the world, and they come through you. So like normally when we speak about our approximation of the term gifts, we think of it often as like gifts that the universe has given me, like things that come really easily to me. But I would argue that your gifts are not meant for you. Your gifts are meant to come through you in the service of something bigger than you. And so we start with your gifts. One of the things that I talk a lot about, and I've done this for clients, is it is often the case that because our gifts come easy to us, is that we dismiss them. And so one of the things that I'll have them do is I go and ask 10 people who know you what your gifts are. And then we can start to look at the patterns around what is emerging here. The second thing is, once we've identified what those gifts are, we then need to turn our attention off ourselves and look out at the world and ask ourselves, who is it that I can serve with these gifts? So this is like finding your lane, right? Or finding your niche or whatever. It's like, I have these gifts. Like you're a great example. You have this gift of having conversations, asking insightful questions, putting people at ease, making people feel comfortable, etc., etc. They're your gifts. They're the things that you're really good at, right? And then the people that you choose to serve are high-performing business owners, people trying to grow themselves, people trying to work on themselves. So, like, you're a great example of that, right? And so the fulfillment, if you like, I would intuit, and you're welcome to challenge me on this if you'd like to, but the fulfillment I would intuit that you feel is around the meaningful contribution that you make to other people and your listeners and all that sort of stuff, right? And so between those two things, understanding your gifts, understanding who you want to serve, and then the third thing is a place to start. So it is often the case that people sit around and wait for the perfect plan rather than just get moving and start serving people with those gifts. And you'll, by default and by proxy, you will develop a better understanding of your gifts, and you will develop a better understanding of your market, and you'll be able to achieve a lot more than if you did. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen clients get stuck in this, is that from where they are standing, they can't see the finish line. They can't see where they're going. And I say, just move, just start doing stuff, start moving, and you will accrue feedback loops through the doing. And through the doing, your path becomes clearer and clearer. It's sort of like, I have a client of mine who's like $1 billion fund manager, like very, very successful guy. And he said to me once, he said, Max, can I give you the best piece of business advice that I've ever taken, received, used, that has helped me the most? And I said, sure. And he said, just solve the problem that's in front of you. He said, so often what happens is we try and articulate to ourselves steps 1 through 10. But by the time you get to step 7, the chance that step 7 is going to manifest itself as you see it from step 1 is 0. He said, at most, you could probably see the step 3, right? But the thing is, as you start to take these steps, you fundamentally change and you fundamentally grow along the journey. And so as you change and you grow, invariably the steps that you take will also change, because when you speculated around step 7 from step 1, you were a particular person. Once you get to step 6, you've now changed and developed and grown. So there's a new step 1 to be taken from there. And so the thing is, just solve the problem that's in front of you. And I think that there's deep, what would you call it, wisdom in that.
And you're spot on what you said about me having peace and having the ability to do the show. I tell people all the time, I'll never have put on my bingo card that I'll have the type of people I had on the show. Doing it since 2017 and having all these average Joes to CEOs to celebrities, everyone in between. I tell people all the time, I still sometimes wake up and be like, wow, I have to pinch myself. I'm talking to who? And I learned that that's the reaction I want to have with all my guests, because everybody, I mean this, everybody is in the making of becoming the best selves. The problem is the individual is the one that has to make that decision. I have wonderful guests. Don't ask me the name because there's thousands of them, but just one thought comes to mind is that this one guy shared with me a profound statement. That is, no one is coming to rescue you. This is your life. It's up to you how you want to lay out what you want to do with it. I thought that was so profound because it's the journey in itself. I love what you said about those steps, because I'm a comedian in my next life, and I couldn't help but think that a lot of times in life, people want to drive the car before they even get in the car, or they want to drive the car before they put the keys in the ignition and turn it on, So what I'm saying is, a lot of times you want to skip these important steps, whether it's self-education, whether it's going back to school, whether it's reading a book, whether it's getting a coach like yourself. there's a lot of times where we miss these important steps in college is prerequisite courses before we get next one, because they are crucial. And in those pockets, if you will, they are teaching us something that only is going to be learned in the field. Sometimes you have a book, but being out in the field is going to be the real sauce. And until you step out, and to your point, you will never have the experience. So therefore, you will never be ready.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, ready is an ever receding idea as well. I even look back at sessions that I did a year ago or 2 years ago, and I think, like, what was I thinking? So ready is an ever receding idea,
Yeah, I like that. Well, by the way, you listen to Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest, Max Stevens. You go to his website, maxstevenscoaching.com. Again, that's maxstevenscoaching.com. You have a book. We can't say the title on radio, but it is What the Blank Are You? I'll let you finish it. But this book is coming out soon, right? It's not available right now. We're recording on May 1st, 2025, but it's coming out, I believe, next month. Let us know some details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book title by way of radio would be WTF Do You Actually Want? And so the book is a no-nonsense guide to finding a life with purpose. And so the book originally started out as a documentation of all of the patterns that I observed within high performers that I work with and their sort of journeys. And so what I sort of lay out in the book is it's a very no-nonsense read. It's very short, very digestible. It's very conversational. It's very alive and not dry at all. There's a lot of cursing in the book. It's a very down-to-earth read. A conversation between the reader and the listener, a reader and I suppose myself as the author. And it's filled with jam-packed with exercises that someone can do to find their purpose. Pre-release will be next month in June. You can find it on Amazon if they're interested. But I think, originally, one thing about me is I hate self-help books. I have always hated self-help books. I think they are filled with fluff and recycled ideas and authors indulging in their own self-proclaimed genius. And, one of the things I talked a lot about in the author's note of the book is when I originally wrote the book, it was 80,000 words, 500 pages long, and when I was reading that back, I said, you're making the same mistake as every other self-help book back, and the thing that I did is I stripped everything down to the absolute bare essentials. So you can read it really quickly. Like I said, very no nonsense and very digestible.
Last question for you is, when you think about belief systems, I mean, you kind of spill the tea however you want to, but from your personal experience being an entrepreneur and dealing with high profile people, how do you believe belief systems can impact a person's decision making and also how they navigate their business journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone, all of your listeners, I would intuit, are listening to your show because in their life, they want better outcomes. So outcomes are the things that we're all after, right? Outcomes are downstream from behavior. So as in the way that I behave in the world generates those outcomes, right? Where I spend my time, conversations that I have, actions that I take, etc., all within the neighborhood of behavior. Upstream from behavior, right, is our decisions. So what we decide to do. So, and upstream from our decisions is our thinking. And upstream from that further still is our worldview. And our worldview is where all of those, what would you call it, beliefs and epistemic positions sit. And so the counterintuitive thing is that I've observed not a lot of people are able to make that connection, is that the outcomes that you are getting in life, or the lack of outcomes that you're getting, are all downstream from your worldview. And so one of the things that I talk a lot about within business is I say, the chokehold of your business is your personal psychology. And so the business can never outgrow your own development. And so if the business isn't growing, it's probably because you're not.
You really just cut that fat off because I mean that was straight to the point, and I liked how you packaged that because I never heard it put in that way, in that unique way, and I think that comes definitely from not just experience, but someone who understands what it means. I always say this sometimes on the show, land a plane, because you can fly and enjoy the scenery for so long. And then before you know it, it's like, oh man, we're about to have an emergency if I don't make a decision to make this come to a full close. So in our last thoughts, man, first I want to say thank you for taking time talking to our audience. But lastly, if someone is hearing this and seeing this and they want to work with you, they don't have to cut the worry about the fat and they just want to cut to the chase. How can they set up an appointment to meet with you and see if they'd be a good fit?
Yeah, of course. Just go to maxstevenscoaching.com. Stevens is spelled with a PH, so maxstevenscoaching.com. They can book in a conversation with me. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and I'm happy to help.
Like always, man, you've been watching us online, hearing us on radio, and where you get your podcast. Been talking to Max Stevens. Like always, man, appreciate your time, man.
Thanks for having me, man.